All right, so I'm super excited tonight. I've been trying to get in touch with this candidate for a long time, mainly because I lived in his district, the 23rd district of Florida. I lived down in Davie, Florida, right around the corner from Nova University, where Tim Canova, I believe, was a law professor. So I'm excited to have Tim Canova with me tonight. Tim, how are you this evening?
Very fine. Thank you, Benjamin. Appreciate being with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Listen, it's a big day, and I know you have a very important campaign, and I honestly think that your campaign now means a lot more to a lot of people because of what it symbolizes. You are running against the former DNC chairwoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and she has become kind of like the flashpoint, and she's become like this emblem of the establishment that many Bernie Sanders supporters are opposing. And on a day like today, where Bernie Sanders has conceded and endorsed Hillary Clinton, what do you think that means for your race? And what would you say to those disillusioned Bernie Sanders supporters?
Well, first of all, I'll point out that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is not actually the former DNC chair yet. I know that there have been some stories that her hands have been taken off the controls of the DNC and that she's just the head in title only. Who knows? The fact is she still is the head of the DNC. She's been a lousy DNC chair, and she needs to be removed not just from the DNC, but she really needs to be removed from office. She's been a very ineffective congresswoman. In the course of just the last few weeks, it's unbelievable what we have uncovered. Last year, she had the highest absentee record of anyone in the Florida congressional delegation except Marco Rubio. And she introduced all of 5 bills last year and not a single hearing from a single bill. And that's a side note. I mean, she's been taking millions of dollars in campaign contributions from the largest corporations and Wall Street banks, and she's been voting for their interests over the interests of South Florida residents. That's why I got into the race. Now, you're absolutely right. On a day like today, where Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the presidential race effectively, I do think that the race that we have here in South Florida takes on a much more of a center stage, you can say. People have always known it's an important race. If we could beat an incumbent like this, who's so well funded by the biggest corporations, it really puts incumbents all over the country on notice that there's a political movement afoot, that progressives have had it, and that it's time for change. And the model for change is a grassroots kind of a campaign where the fundraising comes from the grassroots and the campaigning itself is done at the local level, at the grassroots level.
That's one of the reasons I've been excited about your campaign. You mentioned some of the issues there in South Florida. One of the issues I know about, because you cannot drive around South Florida, Davie in particular, and not run into a check cashing store. And you see the exorbitant interest rates. I mean, sometimes it's like an interest rate of 350% that a person is charged on a payday loan. And the check cashing store is usually where people go to get payday loans. This was a former life, so I know about it. But it's really a major issue there. And then to see some of the things that Debbie Wasserman Schultz had said in support of that industry and some of the money that she gets. Speak to that issue in your community and what it means to your constituents and on a national level.
Well, this is a large district I'm in. It's all the way from Weston on the west side, which is a very affluent area, to east along the coast, Hollywood and Dania Beach and Hallandale. These are much lower income areas. And all over Florida, you see payday loan companies and check cashing companies. And in large part, the abuses, as you said, over 300% interest rates, a cycle of debt, a debt trap that folks get caught in. A lot of this is because of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. When she was, before she was a congresswoman, she was a member of the Florida legislature, and she helped craft Florida's payday lending law, which has been denounced by all kinds of civil rights and consumer protection groups all over the state of Florida. I've called her out on it. She actually was pushing a Republican bill earlier this year in Congress, which would prevent President Obama's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau from regulating payday lenders. And her response was, well, if these low-income folks don't have payday lenders to go to, they're going to have to go to loan sharks. And this is really a false choice. A loan shark might break their kneecaps, but the payday lenders just, automatically debit their accounts, They foreclose on their properties. They essentially put liens on their property. They make people homeless and on the street. And to say that there's no other progressive alternative is such a trope. It really comes from Wall Street. You can take a look at what Elizabeth Warren has been pushing and what I've been advocating as a law professor for years. Reinvigorate the postal system. This country from 1911, I think, until 1967, essentially from Teddy Roosevelt to John Kennedy just about, the postal system was a vibrant banking system. It had checking accounts for low-income folks. And, now if somebody can't afford to get a checking account at a private bank, they've got to go to a check cashing store. They've got to pay over 10% of their check to the company just to get it the check cashed. It's outrageous.
And I know that issue. Go ahead.
If I may just say, Debbie has taken $68,000, I believe, from the payday lending industry over the last few years, and it goes even beyond that $68,000. You take a look, who is funding the payday lenders? Who is giving them a line of credit? It's the big Wall Street banks. Absolutely. And Debbie has been taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from those big Wall Street banks.
Absolutely, man. And listen, it's I've done plenty of research on this industry and how it is intentionally designed, along with some policies by banks, to find ways of capitalizing on poor people. I mean, that's what this industry is for. And so what you're doing down there in that campaign is so significant and so important.